Hey, 7th graders, Mr. Allard, here again with another one of your flip lessons. I'd like to tell you which number this is, but I'm not quite sure because I haven't been in class for a couple days. We've been pretty busy over here in the Allard household, but we'll talk more about that a little bit later. I'm getting some updates from Miss McGuigan. I'm seeing your updates on Schoology, so I'm glad you guys are working pretty hard in my absence. But I should be back with you guys next week, hopefully, and get back to learn some social studies. But this is going to be our Roanoke, Jamestown, um, Plymouth notes, or RGP notes is what we should have it up there. If we don't have everything completely organized, I'll make do with it once we get in. Okay, but as always, you're gonna copy down your notes on your flip lesson, filling in those blank spots as we talk about the first three colonies that were established by the English that later lead into the 13 colonies. Where is my notes? There it is. Sorry, it took me a minute there to find it. Let's go. There we go. Now I'm small. Here we go. Oops, too far. All right. Ooh, now I'm in the map. Sorry. There we go. So Roanoke Colony, who, when, and where. Number one for all of the who's on these colonies is going to be English colonists. This is going to be England's first jump into the colonial game, and as you're going to see, it's much, much, much later than what we saw with the Spanish. Almost 100 years later, and really the English colonies don't take hold until really kind of 200 years after some of those Spanish colonies were created. But Sir Walter Raleigh was sent for England to explore some territory. He makes a claim on an island that's off the coast of present-day North Carolina, kind of near, a little bit north of what we call the Outer Banks today, in 1587. And they're going to call that the Roanoke Colony. So, why were they creating the colony? England was trying to create its first colony in the New World and try to kind of stake that claim. Oh, we got all sorts of noises going on here in the background. But the most important part for Roanoke Colony to kind of establish it is the type of people that came over. They were settlers, they were families. So it wasn't just like young men coming over. It wasn't adventurers like the conquistadors and things like this. This was a father, a mother, and the kids all coming to kind of state their claim and try to establish, some new lands and new territories in the New World. So what happened with the Roanoke colony? It didn't really last long. 1587, basically what happened is the first group of families were kind of offloaded, and then they realized, you know what, it'd probably be a good idea as we build stuff. It's going to take us, 3 months to get back, 3 months, so it's going to take us just half a year in travel time to go get supplies. So why don't we send a group back? So they left the settlers there. Walter Raleigh took a ship back to bring supplies back to the new colony. Only one big problem during that time period. England and Spain declare war on each other, and so Spain and England were attacking each other's ships at the sea. So it was not a good time to be leaving England with a bunch of supplies. You're probably going to get sunk by a Spanish warship. So no supplies reached the colonies for roughly 3 years at least. And again, there's no communication during this time period, so the ability to let people know what was happening wasn't necessarily going to be happening at all either. We also know that they had very poor relations with the natives. As we looked at that kind of first settlement of Roanoke. It was a fort. So why would you have to build 8-foot walls around your settlement? Because you're worried about people getting in. So they didn't have very good relations with the natives. The one we to this day we're still kind of unsure what exactly happened to the Native Americans of Roanoke. We do know the word Croatan was carved on a nearby, kind of where the settlement was, a nearby tree, as you kind of see in that picture. Speculation abounds. People say they were attacked by the natives. People say they went and lived with the natives. People say they were attacked by the Spanish. People say, we've got new evidence showing that it was a particularly harsh growing season that year, so people could have just died of starvation, things like that. But the key is we still don't know exactly what happened at Roanoke. Jamestown Colony was founded 1607. And the key difference here is, again, this is English colonists, but this isn't English families. This is the Virginia Company. And their whole idea is to use this colony and create a profit. So England gives this Virginia Company a plot of land and says, here, basically, you bought it, do what you want, you got to give us a cut, is basically what happened. So in 1607, a group of settlers reached what they called Jamestown, named after King James. And when they get into Virginia, they do not get into a particularly good area. They built basically in a swamp near a river. They want to be near the river for transportation means, but kind of where they are is not a great place to try to live. Obviously, swampland, you're going to be dealing with salt, fresh water mixed with your water, which is not good to consume. You're going to have issues with mosquitoes. You're going to have all sorts of issues going on with where they located the Jamestown colony in 1607. So why are they kind of doing the Jamestown colony? This was strictly a economic colony. It was there to make money, and that's it. So their big thing was, we are going to find gold. That's what their number one goal was. We see all these Spanish conquistadores bringing all this gold back. This is just an area filled with gold. The only problem was Virginia was not. So when they send, roughly 60, 70, original colonists, and 29 of them are businessmen, that's not something that's going to really help your colony start. If you look at that list, I just want you to think of what type of person might you want to start a colony job-wise that isn't there. And I think it's a pretty glaring omission. And we'll kind of talk about that when I get back into class next week. But again, Jamestown, economic reasons. Roanoke, really kind of more social reasons. Started family. Yeah, they wanted to make some money and be able to provide a living, but this was a purely economic enterprise. So what goes on? First of all, let's look at it again real quick. See, Jamestown again was a fort. That suggests poor relations with the natives, and we have some historical evidence that suggests basically if a member of Jamestown at some points just left their fort, they were killed by the Native Americans. They kind of burnt that bridge pretty quickly. Towards the later part, 1610, they start to kind of build their relationship back, but very early on, very poor relations with the natives. Early on, you get about 104 settlers that land in 1607, 1608. Those folks, kind of just plummet. This is not an easy place to live. Disease, things like that. Issues with the natives are drawing down those numbers, and by the end of that first year, only 38 of the 104 remain. Again, little farming. People are basically looking for gold. They're forgetting we got to do stuff to eat. 1609, they're sending 500 more settlers come to Virginia, and this is what really offsets the relations with the natives, because 100 people, okay, but now 5 times that amount has showed up. That's a big issue. So in 1609, with that tense relations, you have a particular bad winter in 1610, and this is what we call the starving time. The population of Jamestown was roughly about 500 to 600 people at the start of the summer of 1609. By the winter of 1610, at the end, when you get another supply ship of settlers coming from the Virginia Company, there's only 60 people left. And we don't know exactly what happened at Jamestown during the starving time, but the evidence that we do have suggests that things were not good. A lot of archaeological evidence coming back is suggesting people were meeting some pretty violent deaths. A lot of and one of the big things that is coming about now with DNA testing and things like that is there may have been some pretty violent things going on, some pretty desperate measures, um, to the point of cannibalism or eating of other human beings during this time period. This was drastic, and really what comes finally, that economic glue, is not gold, but it's the ability to grow tobacco, which is a very expensive cash crop in Europe, and something that is very difficult to grow in Europe. By the late 16, early 1700s, Virginia is producing a very large chunk of the tobacco consumed in Europe, and honestly in the colonies at that point as well. All right, so Plymouth, try to get out of the way here. The Pilgrims, okay? So the Pilgrims settled in 1620 in Massachusetts Bay. Guess what? They wanted nothing to do with Massachusetts. They were about 500 miles off. They wanted to land in Virginia. They wanted to be part of the Virginia colony that was already established at that point. By 1620, starting to have a little bit of success. People aren't dying every single winter, but they're off by about 500 miles, and that's real important because they land in October in Massachusetts. So this is not a great time. This is not great planning. If they would have landed in Virginia in October, it's a little bit warmer, a little bit milder winter, they would have been okay. But they land with basically a month to build everything they need to survive the winter. And there's, we'll talk about kind of what was going on in some of these colonial regions in the next couple, and probably all of next week. This was not the place to do that. You needed that summer to really kind of get those stores up to be able to have something to get you through the winter. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So who were the Pilgrims? Well, the Pilgrims were separatists of the church. What that means is they wanted their own religion, and they had been kind of kicked out everywhere they were practicing their religion. They're originally from England. They faced some religious persecution. People like to say, "Oh, they were persecuted." No, they were picked on. No, that's not what persecution is. Okay, bullying and things like that, do happen, but persecution is that next level. So some things that were their churches were being burnt down in England. Their views were that drastic. Really trying to get rid of, live a very, very simple life. If it's not in the Bible, you're not allowed to do it. Very simple dress, very simple clothes, culture completely based on religion. They get kicked out of England. They go to the Netherlands. They wear out their welcome there. They go back to England, and the King of England says, "Hey, guess what? I got a whole bunch of free land. Why don't you go over there and practice your religion? No one will ever bother you." So they pack their stuff up on the Mayflower. They head out in 1620. So we talked a little bit about this. So I won't spend a whole bunch of time on this. What they want? They want religious freedom. They want to be able to practice their own religion. They were different. They were very, very structured. They were very, very strict. If it wasn't in the Bible, you didn't do it. They wore black. They did all the stuff as the Bible told them, which was very different than the religions at that time period, prominently the Roman Catholic Church. They weren't asking people, there was no gold ornaments. There was no pomp and circumstance in their ceremonies. It was read the Bible, study the Bible. On Sundays, just to give you an example how important it was in their religion, on Sundays, if you did anything besides go to church, you could have a severe punishment, including jail time. And if it kept happening, they would kick you out, or do something even worse than that. So this is a very, very strict religion. They go into the New World. Nobody's going to bother us. They're going to let us practice our own religion. So what were kind of the big things that came out of Plymouth? Honestly, Plymouth winds up getting absorbed by a larger group of people that kind of were very, very similar to the Pilgrims. But the number one big thing is we get the first idea of self-government, or the first democratic piece of the colonies in the Mayflower Compact, which basically says the groups of the Pilgrim on the Mayflower get together and kind of say, we're not going to rely on the king. We're going to rely on ourselves. We're going to do this, and we're going to govern ourselves. Yes, we're going to, the king's going to still be important to us, but really the political, social, economic success of our colony is going to happen because of us. Now, they land in the New World in November, or October, November-ish. They don't really set up the Plymouth till December, and that first year is absolutely terrible. 50% of the colonists are gone in their first year, just because, as you can see from that kind of, they're trying to build a house in November and in December, and then find food and all this other stuff. And it just doesn't work. So that's kind of how Thanksgiving came apart, because those folks who do survive are able to then start that life that they wanted. And really, that summer was a good summer. You're not seeing a lot of death. You're not seeing a lot of destruction. But what you're seeing is, being able to grow crops, being able to sustain their way of life, and do all that stuff. So that was kind of where Plymouth left off. All right, 7th graders. This is Mr. Allard again with one of your flip lessons. As always, you can get a hold of me on Schoology if you have any questions. In school right now, if you're looking for somebody to get a hold of Miss McGuigan. She's awesome. She rocks. She's doing a lot of stuff for me while I'm here. Oh, I think while I'm here, I think there's somebody I should introduce you guys to. Give me a second, though. All right, so as all of you know, I haven't been in class at all this week, and I wanted to give you guys an idea of why I haven't been. It's kind of a really big deal for me that I'd love to be able to share with you guys right now. You've probably heard I became a father for the first time, so this is my son. This is Robert. See if he'll give you a little... Oh, look, his eyes are kind of open here. We just came home today, so I don't want to hear any excuses of you guys not being able to do your homework, because I shot this lesson the day I brought my son home. So here he is, and guys, I can't wait to see you. I miss you guys. Hope you're getting a lot of work done, and I'll see you next week. Until then, Allard out.